Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm here with my weekly wrap up. I'm going to be going over all the books that I read for the first week of March. So let's go ahead and quickly dive into my weekly reads. Okay guys, so hopefully, I always say this when I don't read as much, that hopefully this will be a quicker wrap up, but you never know with the way I talk about books, so I might be here just as long as usual. But this week was kind of tough for me. Honestly, like I've been having a difficult time with some of the arcs that I've gotten recently, and like one arc in particular literally took me 4 days to get through, which I probably should have DNF'd it, but I was really trying to push through and give this book a chance because I love the entire series. But anyways, I will get to that one. So basically, I only have 6 books to talk about this week. I wasn't able to listen to audiobooks as much at work because it's been really busy, lots of meetings, and that's where I get a lot of my audiobooks done. And I think maybe one book might not be an ARC or ALC, but most of them are ARCs and ALCs. I was trying to get a head start on these, get them done quickly because I want to be able to get to our buddy read. I also want to do a buddy read with Crystal for a historical romance. I also have the 2 books that I need to read for the Immortals After Dark read along. So I want to get to those and just be able to mood read and do what I want later in the month. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. These are the 6 books I read this last week. The first book that I want to talk about was an ALC, and this was Finn by Ashley James. Now, I think I've read Ashley James, but it was under A. James before. I don't know if there's a difference or what, or maybe that's a completely different person. So I'm going to say this is my first time reading Ashley James. Not positive, though. But Finn is the first book in the More Men series, and this was so adorable and sexy and everything. You all know that romance, I love it. I love it. I'm reading a lot more romance this year. I just am going to push it because I just love them. I don't know what it is, but I think it's the sexiest books that I usually read end up being and I just love them. And this one was really great because it is a kind of small town cowboy, single dad with his Manny situation here. And I just gobbled this up. So I did listen to the audiobook for this and it was fantastic. This was narrated by Alex Kidd and Gregory Salinas. And it was, I'm trying to remember, it's dual narration. But they both did such an amazing job because it gets hot in this book. So what we have is Finn, and he is a single dad. He's a cowboy. He runs his family's ranch. He's very busy, and he kind of gets in a bad position because his nanny, who's like a live-in nanny and everything, she ends up getting, like, I think moving with her boyfriend. And so she gives him, like, no notice. So now he needs a nanny quick for his son. And he's kind of dating a girl. She's thinking it's more serious than what he thinks. He thinks they're very casual, just kind of hookups, casual relationship, because he doesn't really have a lot of time for a relationship and he's not that into it. But she basically lets him know her twin brother, Ash, is, I think it's Ash, yes. Ash is kind of lost his recent job because they laid off people. And so he has a lot of experience. And so he begrudgingly accepts Ash coming on. He kind of has this, like, didn't really expect him to be as good as Ash is. And Ash is amazing with his son. His son, like, falls in love with him. They have a great bond. And so Ash comes and moves in and is his live-in nanny or Manny. And Ash is amazing. He is this flirty, you know, he's out, he's gay. And he's very attracted to Finn, so he kind of like messes him a little bit, but not where it's not professional in the beginning at least. And he's very flirty and fun and just out with who he is. And so as they're like living in this forced proximity, you know, they kind of are hanging out and getting to know each other. It is kind of like a very grumpy sunshine. You know, Finn is very serious and grumpy, but he's really like drawn to Ash. And what confuses him is he starts to have an attraction to Ash, and he's never been attracted to a man before. So he's kind of questioning that. There's one amazing scene where Ash had bought some toys for himself, and Finn finds them, and he's like, what are you doing with this, you know? And he kind of teases him about it. And that night, like, he decides to play with his toys, but be kind of loud about it. And Finn is just really turned on and drawn to it. So he ends up going in the room and watching. And it was so freaking hot. So we have like a major attraction going on between them. Now, don't worry, like his relationship with the sister, that gets resolved pretty quickly, where he realizes he can't really be with her when he's attracted to a man. He's not really into her, and it's her brother. Now, her brother, Ash, has always kind of felt like guys got close to him where he thought they were into him, and then they would go off with his sister. So he has kind of some hangups with his sister. And so there's some stuff going on there. But he gets very flirtatious with Finn, and they just start to explore their relationship. And Finn it's a bi awakening for him. He's realizing how into men he is and how into Ash he is. And so they start to kind of hook up, and it is spicy. So the things that are going to kind of come into play is like the sister finding out. Honestly, the sister, I did not like her with the way she handles the situation. I thought she was a fucking bitch. But I loved how accepting Finn's family was, because his brother, I believe, is bisexual and out and everything. So he's, you know, completely accepting. Like, so the family is going to be totally accepting of this. It's just kind of an interesting situation with him being his manny and like the son involved. So I love this. It had so many good spicy moments. There's some slight, I guess there is some daddy kink, because Ash does like to call Finn daddy. So that was fun. I just had a great time with this. The narration was really good. I mean, sexy, sexy, sexy. These narrators really brought it. So I love this. I gave this one 5 stars and 3.5 chilies. And I think it's already out right now. So you can definitely get this on audiobook if you're interested. So the next book is the book that I struggled with. So I read Corrupt Me by Bianca Borell. This is the 4th book in the Corrupt Legacy series. And honestly, I think I gave the last 2 like 5 stars. The first one like 4 stars. So I've had a really good time with this series. And this one was just such a letdown for me. And I felt really bad. But it didn't connect with me at all. And it was something I was looking forward to, because Hunter and Bailey have had this kind of interesting dynamic throughout the other books where you knew something was going on with them. Hunter is like kind of being an asshole to her, but you could tell they're drawn to each other. And so there's some animosity and like weird vibes going on. So I was definitely interested in their romance. There's a lot going on in this series that I don't really feel like setting up, but it's kind of almost a secret society, small town type of thing. They're called like the Family. And so they're like the next generation. There's a lot of bad guys from the previous books that they had to like bring down. So now there's only one guy that's like the bad guy, Felix. He's still out there, and they're trying to find him, but he's on the run and they can't locate him. And he had his eyes kind of more set on Bailey. She is the hacker of the group. She's, this really fun, cute, sweet little hacker. And she, has kind of liked Hunter, and Hunter has liked her, but basically kind of pushed her away. And Hunter takes it as his responsibility to keep her safe. So he really takes it on him that he needs to kind of be her bodyguard, help train her fight, because she needs to be able to fight and protect herself. And so they're spending time together. But like a lot of this book was like this push and pull between them, her trying to make him jealous with the guy, like it was just so much. And it was drawing it out a little too long for me. And so eventually they are going to get together. And, Hunter does have some previous trauma. And that's why he was kind of thinking he can ever really be in a relationship. He doesn't really have a good time sexually with people because of that trauma that he experienced. And so he just doesn't think he's going to be able to have that with her. But, so there's a lot of that. So basically, I think this book was almost like 500 pages. And it felt like twice as long. Like, honestly, it was so repetitive. It was like the same fights, the same conversations, the same let's go to that club thing and make each other jealous, and the same back and forth. And then when they finally start having sex, the sex was just all the time, very repetitive. I was skimming 50% of this book. Like, honestly, I skimmed a lot. Like, I'm like, oh, another sex scene. Let me go ahead and skim through this because I don't fucking care. Like, I had other books I need to get to, and this just took forever. And like, for the story that it told, it could have been 300 pages. Like, the story was not that complex. It was overly drawn out to have like this long page count. I didn't really care about them. I was bored. I thought there was just stuff thrown in there to make drama and angst, and I didn't care. And so I was just frustrated by the time I finished this. Now, I was very shocked because everybody was giving it 5 stars. And I just don't get it. A lot of it, too, that really bugged me was it had the cringiest lines. Like, his, like, one-liners with her, like, made me cringe and be like, ugh. Like, in these love scenes, like, no man talks like this in the current time. Like, nobody talks like this. And it just took me out of every, like, emotional scene because it was so over the top, romantic, like, longing little, it just didn't even make sense for what this book was. So I felt really bad, but I ended up giving this one 3 stars and 3 chilies. Everybody else was giving it 5 stars. I think I'm like the only one that gave it a bad review. So I don't know. And I'm usually kind of nice, but I think the 3 stars was me being pretty generous. So I don't know. I was really bummed because it took me 4 days to get through that book. Like, I could not, like, I never wanted to pick it back up. I was just like checked out when I was reading it. So I don't know. I was disappointed because the other books were really well done. So anyways, sorry. Okay, so then I read another arc, and this was The Step Dare. This is by Riley Hart and Devin McCormick. This is the Peach State Step Bros series. I forgot to put the number here. I think it was the 3rd or 4th. I can't remember. Sorry. But this is another romance. This is a friends to lovers. This is between Brenner and Taylor, and they've actually been best friends. They actually are roommates. They go to college together. They game together. They're very like opposites. Brenner's very outgoing, social, all that kind of stuff. And Taylor is more, not antisocial, but, he's not as outgoing as him. But they like really connect, and they have a really beautiful friendship. Now Brenner is bisexual, and he's pretty, he's out about it. And Taylor has had some kind of curiosities about him and kind of has a little bit of attraction. So one time when they always like dare each other stuff. And so one time they're gaming and they kind of do dare about like hooking up with each other. And so that was kind of Taylor being curious and wanting to experiment. And so they decide to start hooking up. They have a great sexual connection, and they're having a good, fun time. They're like best friends that can just like hook up and completely like trust each other. And then unfortunately, they find out that their parents are going to get married. Now Brenner's dad is a widower. His wife died. I don't know how long ago it was. It's been quite a few years. And he had a really hard time with her death and moving on. I think she had cancer. I can't completely remember. And then Taylor's mom was like in a pretty emotionally abusive relationship, and she got divorced from his father, that he like hates his father. So that's the thing that was so sweet with this, is they have such good relationships with their parents, and they really wanted their parents to be happy together. They weren't like all pissy that they were getting married. They wanted them to be happy, but they decided to put a pause on their hookups or stop it altogether because their parents were going to get married, and they don't want them hooking up to give them weird vibes or stop the wedding or any of that. So that was very believable. They really just loved and had such a good relationship with their parents. So they stopped hooking up, but there are roommates and they are really attracted to each other. And so they decide to kind of cheat the system of like not hooking up by like having a 3-way with one of their other guy friends. that's like very out there. He like loves hooking up with guys, and he's like a good fun time. And that was a pretty hot scene. But after that, they can't like seem to stay away from each other. So they start to kind of secretly hook up. And, you know, it's going to be what's going to happen if that's found out about or whatever. This was very sweet, low angst. Their friendship was very beautiful. They're very close. You could feel that they are a true good friendship. They're always very supportive of each other. So that starts to turn from just hooking up to like more emotional feelings involved, where, you know, they are cuddling every day, like watching movies, holding hands, like they are a couple. And so it was just very, very sweet. And then the whole reveal wasn't this big angsty thing. It was handled really well. So I really enjoyed this one. So I am giving this one 4 stars and 4 chilies. There is a lot of spice in this, a lot of, you know, discovering what he can do. They both will kind of do switching where one tops, the other one will top the next time. So they both experience that. And so it was just very, very hot. Good time for me. Okay, so then I read the second part of that duet for Carissa Broadbent. That's like the vampire, I think it's Nixia or whatever. I forgot to write down the series name. But anyways, I read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This is the second part of Rain and Araya's romance. The last one left off on a cliffhanger. I don't want to say too much because this is the second part. If you haven't read the first one, I don't want to give anything away. So that's always really hard to kind of give you guys details without giving things away. But we're kind of left in a big conflict situation between Rain and Araya after the first one. Now, they both had completed in those trials. That was like to, you know, get the wish from the goddess, Nixia or whatever. And then they were, somebody won that, and things were happened in the previous book that, God, it's like, how can I even tell you about this book without giving things away? But Araya, like her father was a vampire. He was like the head vampire of this one city. And, you know, all these different vampire factions can kind of be at war with each other. The vampires were pretty brutal, where like he had killed off all his family, so nobody could be his like heir. And so he kind of like rescued her from like a home when she was a child and raised her as his daughter. And so she was trying to compete in that competition to be able to like get like be tied and linked to him and maybe become like full vampire or whatever, because like if they turn a human into a vampire, it's very dangerous. Most don't survive the churn. And then she had met Rain in that competition, and they kind of like helped each other through it, and then like fell for each other. So there's so much more to it, which I can't really say. But this one picks up right where the last one left off. And, you know, they are not in a good place, Rain and Araya. Some bad stuff went down at the end of the last book where they're not good. But, you know, Rain is definitely trying to make amends and has a good little bit of grovel and showing Araya how he's just gone for her, and this boy loves her and is obsessed with her. But he's in a really tricky position. This is like really a complex look at Raya's relationship with her father, because he was a bad man. Like, he did really horrible things. He killed off his entire family. He hurt a lot of other people. But she loved him. He was her father. And so she has a lot of conflict, a lot of things that she needs to resolve about her feelings for her father, because he wasn't the best father. He did some fucked up shit, but she still loved him, you know? So that's really like a lot of this book deals with that too. And she has such an amazing arc, amazing coming into herself, finding her powers, finding who she really is. And kind of the journey she goes on. So I'm being super vague because I can't really bring up all the stuff that is in this book because it'll ruin the first book for you. I can say I liked the first book. I thought it was really good, but I loved this one so much more. I think it is the perfect balance between romance and fantasy. There was so much more world building in this one that didn't just feel like it's inundating you or telling you about the world, or it was layered perfectly throughout the book. I loved all the side characters, even the kind of guy from like the blood vampire ones. Like, he's kind of a bad guy, but like I'm very intrigued by him. So I really thought this was very well done. I loved Rain. He was very swoon worthy. He's like a cinnamon roll vampire. And I just really loved it. This book really took it to the next level. And I am just so impressed with Carissa Broadbent's writing and how she develops these worlds and all the character development and romance, and there's like a lot of political intrigue and stuff going on. So I was fascinated. So this one was really, really good. I highly recommend. This is the first 2 books of that series, and then the next one I think is going to go on to Misha's romance, which is one of Rain's best friends, and she was also turned into a vampire, and she has a really sad story too. So I'm definitely very interested to get to her books. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars and 2.5 chilies. I definitely recommend it. I think it's so well done. I think Carissa Broadbent is like one of my favorite fantasy or romantasy, if you want to call that, authors out there. I think she just does such a great job. I love her series. Okay, so then I have another arc. I read Dance of Deception by Jagger Cole, and this is the start of his new series. This is the first book in the Darkest Dance series. So, I've been requesting all the arcs for Jagger Cole's books, and he pretty much puts one out every other month, I feel like. So I'm sure we'll be getting the second book really quickly for this already. But this is between Carmine Baroni and Lyra, and Carmine was actually introduced, I think, in Toxic Love, which wasn't his previous Mori series, which was, the Yakuza, but the series before that. So I had to kind of remember him. So he's actually like Bianca's brother. If you remember Bianca's romance, she married one of the Greek brothers. But anyways, so he is about to become the Don. His father has decided to kind of retire, step down, and so he is on his way to becoming the Don. He is also part of like this kind of secret society within the mafia that not all the mafia is okay with. It's called the Black Court. And him, I think, and 4 other guys, they all wear like types of like animal masks, and they have like this secret society kind of club parties where people meet up, and they kind of dispense their own justice on mafia members or people that need to be punished. So that was really unique. There was a cool thing with that, a reveal with that club, which I'll get to. But then we have Lyra, and she has such a tragic history. She is a ballerina. She's really struggling to get by with her mother. Her mother's an alcoholic and doesn't really contribute much. And she actually is the daughter of a serial killer. He actually worked as like, I think an enforcer or like a brute kind of guy in the Bratva. So Kier has also been introduced in the previous series. He's the head of the Bratva, and I love his character. I really wanted the book to be his start of his series, but we're not there yet, I guess. But, her father worked for him. But he was also kind of basically kidnapping, raping, and like killing women. And he had this like hidden kind of door that went like a storm cellar type of thing, whatever, that they weren't allowed to go into. And one day it was left open, and Lyra goes down there and she finds this whole like sick room where he had multiple women locked up, and she walks in on him assaulting a woman. And it was just freaked her out, and she basically ran to the neighbors, and her father got arrested. She ended up testifying against him. And so he went away to prison, and he was stabbed in prison. So she is suffering because they're really like in a bad situation after all that. And then there's also this kind of conspiracy theorist podcast guy that like makes it out like she helped her father, which is so ludicrous. And so she has like these, the victims' families kind of harassing her, and they'll like show up at places randomly and be like rude, like pretty abusive to her. So she's been through a lot. And now some of the guys from a different mafia, like they are henchmen or whatever, knock down her door and basically tell her and her mother that they have to pay off her father's debt. And so they have to pay like $5,000 a week, which is like impossible for them. They're barely getting by. So one of her friends is like dancing at this like kind of secret thing where they blindfold you, drive you somewhere. You keep your blindfold on and you just dance. Like they don't do anything sexual. You're just like in these cages. You dance for like people, but you have your blindfold on. And so she ends up going to do it because she really needs the money. And that's where she stumbles upon this black court because her blindfold kind of slips a little bit where she could see. And she sees those guys in the masks, and then they end up killing this guy. And the Hound is actually Carmine. They don't fully reveal who each of the other masks are, but they are this group of, like, some of them are Bratva, some of them are in the Italian mafia, that kind of thing. They met at that, like, Hogwarts mafia type of school that Jagger has introduced previously. And so they came up with this club together. And so he realizes that she saw him do that. But he kind of like lets it go or whatever. But now she realizes she needs a lot of money, and she hears that he needs to get married. For becoming the Don, he has to get married. And so he's holding an audition for a wife. And so she shows up to that audition, and he basically churns her away, and she basically threatens him and blackmails him about how she knows who he is, and what he's up to. And that really pisses him off. But so he ends up showing up and forcing her to marry him anyways. So it's kind of it's kind of like a forced marriage, even though she went for that, because now he's like, I ain't paying you the money, but like, I already killed the guy that you owed money to and all that kind of stuff. So now I own you. And so he forces her into the marriage. So we have this forced marriage, and she is really, she's a virgin, but she's into some kinky stuff, which he could tell. She really is into kind of the CNC, primal play, really rough sex. There's a lot of kinky stuff in here, which you will always get in a Jagger Cole book. It's going to be spicy. So this does have a lot of spicy scenes. I liked it, but I feel like it didn't blow me away because there wasn't that much romance. It was a lot of sexual stuff. And that's been a complaint with me with Jagger Cole before, was it's not a lot of connection between them. It's just like high heat sex, and then they're like are in love. So that didn't totally blow me away, but I really loved the setup of this new like black court. I loved all the mafia intrigue. There was some like crazy twists at the end that I didn't see coming. He is always really good with like the mafia, the politics, like all the stuff going on mafia wise that makes his books were so easy to read, where you can read them super fast and be entertained. So even though it didn't give me as much of a romance as I wanted, I still enjoyed it. I do think it's hard too when you're setting up a new series. We're trying to introduce all these side characters and this black court and all this stuff going on. So I think it's a lot to tackle in that first book. So that might have been taking up more of the time than us having them build a relationship. I did feel their connection, but just not to the level that I wanted. So I still really had a good time with this one. Some of the stuff, kinky, we got rough sex. He loves marking her up, so she'll have lots of bruises and things all over her. He bites her a lot. They have primal, CNC, somnophilia, some of that in here. So it's a spicy good time. Then I'm very curious to get to the other masks romances and see where we go from there. But I really had a good time with this. I thought it was crazy because I didn't think he was as psycho in the previous book that he was introduced in, but he's like a total like psychopath in this, the way he's described. So he doesn't really have a lot of connections or feel morally guilty about things, but he will burn the world down for his woman. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars and then 3.5 chilies. Okay, so the last one that I read, I just finished this, and it was for Wrath and Redemption. I got the ALC for this one, and this is by Brit Benson, and it's in the Hometown Heartless series. Now, I only read the previous one in this series, and I really enjoyed it. I got the audiobook for that one as well, and I loved it. So I really wanted to get to this one too. This is between Jonah and Claire, and Jonah is actually the guy that had the threesome with the couple in the previous book. So if that rings any bells for you, it was hot. But Jonah is kind of a mess. And so is Claire. So this is a really tough one because it tackles some really heavy stuff and it's very emotional. And I think that's why I like this, because I generally don't really love rock star romances. I think they're always just like too much of a fuck boy that parties a lot, that does a lot of drugs, and there's a lot of jealousy and blah, blah, blah. And I never really get into it. But with this and the previous one, I think Brit Benson makes it more emotional and like takes it to a deeper level. And so I really enjoyed that. So this one is really a story about a redemption story for both of these characters. Now, I will say I have not read the previous series that Claire was introduced in, but it's basically mentioned in this of how she kind of fucked over people in her life. And I'm not going to go into that, but like where she has a lot of guilt, she's like totally cut off from her like brother and people and best friend because of what she did. And it wasn't malicious or horrible, but she did do something that had bad consequences. So she has a lot of guilt over that. And so this is kind of her redemption story as well, because like Jonah is a mess. He's a drug addict. He has a horrible relationship with his parents. And later in the book, when you realize how bad it really is and what he's been through, it's just so heartbreaking. But he learns that his mom died from a drug overdose, or, you know, does they think maybe she almost attempted to kill herself? He doesn't know, but he was on tour and he just like kind of leaves and shows up at their mausoleum or whatever, her grave, and kind of gets arrested, a whole thing. So he's not doing great. And so his father is runs like PR for like companies, businesses, I believe. And so he ends up sending Claire to kind of clean up his son's image and be the PR girl for the band. And the thing is she's secretly dating his dad. His dad kind of went about this really creepily too. Like, what a creep. Like, he knew that she worked for his company, but like didn't tell her he knew. And they met a different way and started being together. And then she ended up moving up in the company and then realizing she worked for him directly. And so but she stayed with him. She doesn't make the best choices in relationships. And he's kind of like has her be like a secret because they don't want people to know. And then she could like not have her look like she slept her way up the top and all that kind of stuff. So she's not really happy that she's going out for this, because she actually just did this whole pitch and did a lot of the work for another project that another guy got credit for, which really upset her. But she knows she really needs to do it to keep her job and whatever. So she ends up going out there to kind of be a babysitter to Jonah and work on his PR and building his image to have a better public image. And they are just like immediately attracted to each other. And, you know, sees what a mess he is, but really wants to help him. I mean, Jonah is a mess, but he is a good guy underneath it all. And he just needed help. You know, and some people that might enable him around, you know, with his drug use, and some of the band actually really want him to get the help he needs. The tough thing about this book is Claire, because she has eating disorder. She went to like rehab and got treatment for it before, but with everything going on right now, she's it's coming back. Like those triggers are happening to make her do that kind of behavior again. So a big trigger warning for the eating disorder. There's purging. There's she over exercises, like that's like dangerous. So she's dealing with that, and then also Jonah is dealing with his drug addiction. So they are fire together. That's super hot. But they're both messes. It's a little toxic. They have so much to work through on themselves. So like, how can they make their situation work? So there's a lot more to it than that. I thought it was very emotional. I thought they both had such a good arc, a good journey. They really worked on themselves. It wasn't like a fix overnight type of thing so that they could be together. So I really liked the pacing in that, and then how their relationship evolved. There were some fucked up stuff that Jonah did near the beginning, because he finds out that she's actually dating his father, and he acts out a little fucked up, but he does make up for it, and you know, he really like falls for her. So I just love these poor messed up people, and they really found each other, and it was just really beautiful. So I loved it. This was narrated by Jason Clark and Molly Stark. It was duet narration. It was fantastic. The previous audiobook was duet narration as well. They were really, really good. So I loved this. Even though it's emotional, it has some triggering stuff in it, and it may be difficult to read. I think it was a beautiful story, a beautiful redemption for these two characters. So I ended up giving that one 5 stars and 3.5 chilies. So those are all the books that I read this week. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, comment down below, and I will see you guys on the next one.